the spring of 1873, as Milwaukee's German quarter shook off the final crusts of winter ice, whispers about Emma Richter had grown into something darker. What began as curiosity, a child prodigy with a gift for memory and numbers, had turned into fear. Neighbors crossed themselves when she passed. Mothers hurried their children indoors when her gray eyes scanned the cobblestone streets. Her predictions had already shattered 2 families and exposed secrets buried for years. But what terrified them most was her leather journal, pages filled with calculations no one could decipher, columns of numbers, coded symbols, dates marked with tiny X's, to the untrained eye, meaningless scribbles. But to Emma, each mark predicted a chain of events leading toward an inevitable conclusion. The German quarter itself was a microcosm of old Bavaria, transplanted to the American Midwest. Red brick breweries, narrow wooden homes, the scent of rye bread and hops thick in the air. It was a community that clung to tradition, that prized order and faith. Yet Emma's presence disrupted that order like a stone cast into still water. By April, 3 men were dead. 2 from illness Emma foresaw with chilling accuracy. 1 from violence she predicted down to the minute. Now, as the community tried to carry on, Emma's calculations grew stranger. She began measuring the intervals between church bells, the angles of shadows at certain times of day, even the frequency of dogs barking at night. Heinrich and Greta Richter, once proud of their gifted child, now lived in constant dread. Every quiet observation, every murmured prediction, felt like a curse whispered through their modest home. And in Emma's pale, calm face, they saw no malice, only inevitability. The worst they feared had not yet come. Emma's reputation transformed the German quarter overnight. Once welcomed as a curiosity, the little mathematician, they called her, she was now regarded with suspicion. Shopkeepers served her family silently, eyes cast down. Children who once begged her to recite impossible sums now crossed the street to avoid her gaze. Rumors spread quickly. Old women claimed Emma spoke to spirits through numbers. Men whispered she had inherited some ancient Bavarian witchcraft, brought over the Atlantic in secret. Father Kohler, the stout priest who once praised her talents as divine, now urged the congregation to guard against dark influences hiding in plain sight. Greta clung desperately to the idea that her daughter was simply misunderstood. She begged Heinrich to keep faith, to remember Emma's gentle nature. But Heinrich, hardened by brewery work and sleepless nights, began to fear what he could not explain. Emma herself seemed indifferent to the growing isolation. Each day she filled her journal with neat columns of figures and strange diagrams, overlapping circles, spiraling sequences, geometric shapes that hinted at deeper patterns. She watched the neighbors through the kitchen window, silent and calculating, as if every movement revealed a secret formula. One evening, as the brewery's whistle signaled shift's end, Emma closed her journal and calmly told her parents, 3 more will die before Pentecost. 1 by water, 1 by blade, 1 by fire. Greta dropped her sewing. Heinrich demanded to know how she could possibly predict such things. Emma only shrugged. The numbers do not lie. Outside, the last snowmelt trickled into the gutters. The first green shoots of spring pushed through the cold earth. And with them came the quiet certainty that Emma's prophecy, like all her others, would unfold exactly as foretold. The first of the 3 deaths came only days later. On April 16th, a brewery worker named Karl Huber drowned in the Menomonee River. Witnesses claimed he had slipped on wet stones while carrying barrels to the dock. But Emma, when told of the accident, simply nodded. It was water, she murmured. 1 down. Her parents were horrified. Heinrich demanded she stop speaking in riddles, forbidding her from sharing any more calculations with neighbors. But Emma obeyed only in silence. The predictions did not stop. At night, Greta sometimes found her daughter awake in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, whispering numbers under her breath. 31, 72, 104. When Greta asked what they meant, Emma would calmly reply, Days, Mama. The days left until it happens. By now the German quarter buzzed with unease. The drowning, combined with Emma's earlier predictions, deepened the sense that something unnatural was unfolding. Men muttered over steins of beer in the taverns. Women locked their doors at dusk. Even Father Caller's sermons took on a desperate edge, warning of divine tests and demonic trickery. 2 weeks later, the second death struck. By blade. Ernst Kellner, the brewery owner whose affair Emma had exposed, was found stabbed in his office late one night. No witnesses, no forced entry, only a trail of blood leading to the alley, and a community too afraid to speculate aloud. When Hinrich returned home with the news, Emma's response chilled him to the core. 2, she whispered, marking an X in her journal. The fire, everyone knew, was next. And though no one dared say it, whispers grew louder. Was Emma merely predicting these tragedies, or somehow causing them? By May, the German quarter existed in a state of hushed dread. Neighbors avoided eye contact, prayers were whispered more fervently, and the once lively beer gardens stood half-empty as rumors spread faster than the scent of malt in spring air. The third death loomed over everyone. Fire, Emma had said, a single word that carried more weight than any sermon, in a community where most homes were wooden and brewery furnaces burned day and night. The fear was palpable. Hinrich began locking Emma's journal away at night, terrified of what her relentless calculations might reveal. But she always found it again. No matter where he hid it, in the pantry, beneath floorboards, even inside the brewery storeroom, Emma would retrieve it without explanation, her calm gray eyes offering no comfort. On May 12th, the prophecy was fulfilled. A blaze erupted in the Weber home after midnight, consuming the modest house before neighbors could form a bucket line. 2 perished. Wilhelm Weber's youngest daughter and his aging mother. The fire marshal blamed a tipped lantern, but in the German quarter, blame whispered elsewhere. Emma said fire. Someone muttered at the ruins. She knew. Father Caller convened a parish meeting days later. The tension was thick, the air charged with unspoken accusation. Without naming her, the priest warned of dark forces wearing innocent faces. That night, stones struck the Richter windows. A crude cross was burned into their door. Hinrich began making plans to leave Milwaukee altogether. Greta resisted, clinging to routine, praying the rumors would fade. But Emma? She simply wrote more numbers, more dates, more precise predictions that frightened even her parents. For Emma's calculations no longer predicted accidents, they predicted choices. The journal's contents had shifted. No longer mere tallies of footsteps and bell tolls, Emma's entries now resembled maps of human emotion, charting when people lied, when they strayed, when violence simmered beneath polite smiles. Greta found pages devoted entirely to the priest. Caller, 71% guilt, 43 steps to sacristy after Vespers, avoids eye contact with Weber widow, prays longer when rain. Other pages tracked neighbors' secrets with unnerving clarity. Mrs. Schneider hides coins in stovepipe. Mr. Braun drinks alone every Thursday. Child Fisher cries 14 times nightly between 2-3 a.m. It wasn't just prediction anymore. It was surveillance. Hinrich confronted Emma one evening, demanding to know why she wrote such things. Her answer was chilling in its simplicity. Patterns reveal truth. Truth reveals danger. Meanwhile, the community's fear metastasized into hostility. Families stopped greeting the Richters at church. Strangers spat when Hinrich passed on his way to the brewery. The more accurate Emma's observations became, the more isolated they grew. One morning, Greta awoke to find dead birds arranged neatly on their doorstep. 3 in a row, their necks twisted unnaturally. No note, no explanation, only silent warning. By June, Emma's predictions extended beyond the quarter. She spoke of blood by the river. A man in blue collapsing at noon. 3 bells before the bridge falls. When these events transpired days later, a barge worker drowned, a soldier fainted in the market, and scaffolding collapsed by the brewery bridge. The whispers grew unbearable. "She brings it," someone hissed at market. "Not God, not chance. Her." And yet Emma remained eerily calm, her journal swelling with numbers. For every tragedy confirmed, she simply wrote a single word beneath the date. Inevitable. By midsummer, Henrik could no longer ignore the danger. The family was being shunned, their home vandalized. Rumors grew that Emma would be dealt with if her parents would not act. Milwaukee's immigrant quarter, tight-knit and devout, had turned on them. Henrik made a desperate plan to send Emma away to relatives in Chicago. Greta protested. Emma was only 11, far too young to travel alone. But Henrik feared for her safety, and perhaps for their souls. On the night he resolved to tell Emma, he found her awake, staring at the ceiling, whispering numbers. 2 days, she murmured. 48 hours, patterns complete. 2 days until what? Henrik asked. Emma turned her gray eyes toward him. Until everything ends. The next morning, smoke rose from the brewery district. A violent brawl had erupted between workers, sparked by rumors of sabotage. 3 men were killed in the chaos. Several more were injured. Among the dead, a foreman who, Emma had noted weeks prior, carried unpaid debts, 92% anger retention. When word spread that Emma had predicted 3 deaths before midsummer, suspicion hardened into rage. That evening, a mob gathered outside the Richter home. Torches flickered, stones shattered windows. Voices shouted accusations: witch, curse, devil's child. Heinrich barred the doors while Greta prayed aloud, clutching Emma to her chest. Through it all, the girl remained strangely serene, murmuring, "They follow the pattern. They cannot help themselves." By dawn, the mob dispersed, but the message was clear: leave or face their wrath. Henrik began packing. Greta wept quietly. Emma wrote one final entry in her journal, circling a date, June 23rd, and drawing a small perfect triangle beneath it. June 23rd began clear and calm. Sunlight glittered off Lake Michigan. The air smelled faintly of hops and river water. The Richters, having decided to flee Milwaukee at first light, loaded their modest belongings into a borrowed wagon. Their destination, Chicago, a day's journey south. But Emma hesitated. As Henrik secured the last trunk, she stood barefoot in the street, journal clutched to her chest. "We can't leave," she whispered. Greta knelt, gripping her shoulders. "Why not, Emma? They'll kill us if we stay." Emma's eyes darted toward the brewery district. "Because today it happens. The pattern ends here." Before Henrik could press her, distant screams split the morning air. A column of black smoke rose above the red brick buildings. Bells rang frantically. The brewery fire had begun. As they rushed toward the chaos, Emma's calm voice cut through the din. 18 dead, 2 survivors, both liars. The fire spread with terrifying speed, leaping from building to building, fueled by wooden beams and spilled spirits. Workers fled in panic, their cries mingling with the crackle of flames. Amid the confusion, Emma guided her parents unerringly, avoiding collapsing walls, predicting where smoke would clear, leading them to safety time and again. Only later, when the blaze finally died, did Heinrich realize Emma had mapped the entire disaster in her journal days before. The death toll matched her predictions exactly. And among the survivors were 2 men who, as later investigation revealed, had deliberately sabotaged the brewery to cover their theft of funds. The community, stunned by Emma's eerie foresight, stood divided. Some hailed her as blessed, others cursed. But for the Richters, one truth was clear. Milwaukee would never accept their daughter again. In the chaotic aftermath of the brewery fire, the German quarter teetered between grief and fury. 18 coffins lined the modest parish, their funerals held over 3 days. The community demanded answers. How had the blaze begun? And why had Emma predicted it so precisely? Rumors split along dangerous lines. Some insisted Emma was clairvoyant, chosen by God to reveal hidden truths. Others muttered darker things, that she had summoned the disaster herself, a witch cloaked in childish innocence. Heinrich begged Father Kohler to speak publicly in Emma's defense. The priest refused. The people's fear is stronger than their faith, he admitted quietly. They will not listen. Meanwhile, Emma grew more withdrawn. She filled her journal obsessively, each page a lattice of numbers and symbols that baffled her parents. Triangles, circles, spiral sequences, patterns that hinted at something vast and terrifying, yet just beyond comprehension. When Greta asked what they meant, Emma only whispered, "Cycles. We are near the end." Plans to flee Milwaukee became urgent. Heinrich arranged passage on a riverboat south to Chicago, departing June 28th. But Emma seemed unconcerned. "Too late," she murmured one evening, gazing at the smoke-stained horizon. "The pattern is complete." 2 days later, a new horror struck. The body of young Lucas Braun was found by the river, throat cut cleanly, no sign of struggle. He had been seen arguing with his father the day before. Emma's journal contained a chilling notation dated 3 nights prior. Lucas, blade, water, silence. When confronted, Emma simply said, "I warned him." That night, as whispers of mob violence swelled once more, the Richters prepared to vanish under cover of darkness. But Emma would disappear first. The night of June 27th was restless and windless. The Richters had packed what they could carry: bread, blankets, a few family keepsakes. Their plan was simple: slip away at dawn, reach the riverboat before anyone noticed. But when Heinrich rose at first light, Emma was gone. Her bed was neatly made, her shoes absent. The leather journal lay open on the table, its last entry stark in its precision. June 27th, 3:14 a.m. Pattern ends. Do not follow. Panic consumed the household. Greta collapsed in sobs, screaming Emma's name into empty streets. Heinrich scoured alleys, taverns, even the ruins of the brewery. Neighbors watched silently from doorways, offering neither comfort nor aid. Some muttered that the child had been taken by angels, others by demons. By evening, Father Kohler organized a search party. Lanterns combed the riverbanks and brewery tunnels, but no trace of Emma was found. Only strange markings near the water's edge. A series of triangles etched into the mud, perfectly spaced, pointing east toward Lake Michigan. For 3 days, the search continued. Volunteers dwindled. Rumors grew. Some claimed to see Emma's pale figure near the shoreline at night, standing silently, gray eyes reflecting moonlight. Others swore she appeared in dreams, whispering numbers they could not remember upon waking. On the 4th day, the search was abandoned. Milwaukee moved on, burying its dead, rebuilding its breweries, and locking away the memory of the calculating child who had vanished like smoke. But Heinrich and Greta never stopped looking, and the journal, the only clue Emma left behind, remained sealed in the priest's possession, too terrifying for her parents to read. The journal became legend, bound in worn brown leather. Its pages brimmed with calculations that seemed at once mundane and prophetic. Notations of footsteps, heartbeats, phases of the moon, interwoven with cryptic phrases. 3 bells, 72 shadows, fire remembers. Father Kohler, fearing public hysteria, locked the journal in the parish archives. Yet whispers persisted that the priest secretly studied its pages at night, seeking hidden codes within the numbers. Some claimed he discovered predictions stretching far beyond 1873, dates that aligned with future tragedies, even wars. Years later, in 1882, the journal vanished from church custody. No break-in, no signs of theft. It was simply gone. Meanwhile, sightings of Emma surfaced across the Midwest. A pale girl with gray eyes seen boarding a train in Chicago. A barefoot child counting paces along a Kansas riverbank. A young woman, eerily silent, tending graves in rural Iowa. None were confirmed. Heinrich and Greta never left Milwaukee. Greta died in 1889, still calling Emma's name in her sleep. Heinrich followed 3 years later, clutching a scrap of paper scrawled with numbers no one understood. By the turn of the century, Emma Richter's story had faded into folklore, a cautionary tale whispered to children on stormy nights. But the journal's legend endured. Collectors of occult artifacts whispered that it resurfaced in St. Louis in 1901, sold to a private buyer. Others claimed it was buried in the foundations of a brewery rebuilt over the old ruins. Wherever it lies, its numbers remain unbroken, and those who study its patterns warn that some dates, marked with triangles, are yet to come. In modern Milwaukee, Emma Richter is remembered in fragments, a local ghost story, a whispered legend among brewery workers, an obscure footnote in immigrant history. Few believe she existed at all. But archival evidence tells otherwise. Church records confirm the Richter's presence in 1873. Brewery logs note Heinrich's employment, interrupted abruptly that summer. And in a faded photograph, preserved in the Milwaukee Historical Society, a pale girl with unsettling gray eyes stares directly into the lens, unblinking, calculating. Paranormal researchers in the 20th century revived interest in Emma's case. They examined the surviving fragments of her journal, 3 pages found in an attic during renovations in 1926. The pages contained strings of numbers arranged in spirals, intersecting at dates corresponding to disasters. The Great Chicago Fire, the Peshtigo Blaze, even the Titanic's sinking decades later. Skeptics dismissed the connections as coincidence. Believers saw prophecy. In 1973, on the fire's centennial, a local historian claimed to decode one of Emma's patterns, a prediction of 4 shadows on glass towers. 28 years later, when 2 planes struck the World Trade Center, the rumor gained chilling new life. Today, true believers scour Emma's mathematics for future warnings. Forums dissect grainy scans of her notes, debating whether triangles signify death, renewal, or both. Amateur cryptographers claim new patterns emerge each year, aligning with floods, fires, and pandemics. But perhaps the most unsettling rumor is this. Sightings of a gray-eyed girl still occur in Milwaukee's old brewery district, always silent, always counting, and always vanishing before anyone can approach. Legends grow in the telling, and Emma Richter's has become tangled with other Midwestern mysteries. Vanishing children, prophetic dreams, unmarked graves. Some historians argue her story reflects the immigrant experience, anxieties of a community clinging to faith amid hardship. Others insist Emma was real, her gift an unsolved neurological marvel lost to time. Yet patterns persist. In 1998, construction workers excavating near the old Kellner Brewery unearthed a rusted tin box. Inside, fragments of cloth, child-sized shoes, and a triangular charm etched with numbers. Forensic analysis dated the items to the 1870s. 2 years later, a Milwaukee archivist uncovered a forgotten letter from Father Caller. Dated 1880, it hinted at Emma's fate. The child is not gone, but elsewhere. Her numbers mark not time, but return. When the bells toll thrice at noon, look east. The letter ended abruptly, as if torn mid-sentence. Paranormal investigators seized on this clue, scouring east-facing landmarks, timing church bells, mapping shadows. No definitive discovery followed, but strange reports multiplied. Clock faces cracking at noon, birds circling over the lake, distant whispers of counting on windless days. Skeptics remain unconvinced, but believers note one chilling fact. Every 27 years, disasters strike Milwaukee's old brewery district. Fires, collapses, unexplained deaths. Each event aligns eerily with dates found in Emma's surviving notes. The next predicted date? Approaching fast. In the age of digital obsession, Emma's legend has found new life online. Forums dedicated to historical mysteries trade theories, dissect journal scans, and analyze old maps of Milwaukee's German Quarter. Reddit threads debate whether Emma's calculations were primitive algorithms predicting human behavior, or something far stranger. A fringe community, calling themselves pattern keepers, claims Emma unlocked a universal code, the mathematics of fate. They insist every human action, every tragedy, follows repeating cycles visible only to those who count obsessively, as Emma did. Their evidence? Chilling. Birth records, death certificates, and crime reports plotted along Emma's surviving sequences reveal recurring intervals. 18 days, 72 days, 3 years, 27 years. Events separated by decades mirror one another with uncanny precision. Fires on the same streets, drownings in the same river bends, suicides in the same attic rooms. Mainstream historians dismiss the pattern keepers as conspiracy theorists. But even skeptics admit unease when walking Milwaukee's old brewery district at night. The area remains eerily quiet, its cobblestone alleys largely unchanged since Emma's time. Locals still whisper about the gray-eyed girl. A brewery security guard swears he saw her reflection in a window, though no one stood behind him. A tourist photographing historic ruins captured a blurred figure in the background, barefoot, head tilted, lips moving silently as if counting. Whether ghost, myth, or misunderstood genius, Emma Richter refuses to vanish from Milwaukee's memory. And if the pattern keepers are right, her numbers still run, counting down to something yet to come. In 2023, a private collector revealed what may be Emma's original journal, purchased anonymously at an estate sale in Illinois. Bound in cracked leather, its pages were brittle yet intact, filled with numbers spiraling inward toward a single date, August 4th, 2025. The journal's final page bore only 3 words: "Pattern ends again." Experts rushed to authenticate the find. Handwriting analysis matched surviving samples. Paper fibers dated to the 1870s. More unsettling were the patterns themselves. Sequences predicting historical events with eerie accuracy. The 1918 flu pandemic, the 1929 market crash, even the 2004 tsunami. Cryptographers remain divided. Some argue Emma's notes reflect coincidence amplified by confirmation bias. Others believe she glimpsed something deeper, an underlying rhythm to human history, repeating across generations like tides. As August 2025 approaches, online forums buzz with speculation. Will another brewery fire erupt? A flood? A mass tragedy? Locals in Milwaukee report rising unease. Clocks stopping inexplicably. Animals behaving strangely. Whispers of counting heard in empty streets. And most chilling, multiple witnesses claiming to see a barefoot girl near the river. Gray-eyed, silent, always walking east. Police dismiss the sightings as hysteria. Historians call it folklore. But those who know Emma's story, those who have studied the numbers, feel the dread mounting. Because the last time Emma marked pattern ends, Milwaukee burned. Legends rarely end cleanly, and Emma Richter's may be no exception. As August 2025 draws near, researchers, skeptics, and believers converge on Milwaukee's brewery district, retracing Emma's footsteps. Documentarians film interviews with descendants of those who knew her. Paranormal investigators camp near the riverbank where she vanished. Among them is Dr. Lena Moritz, a behavioral mathematician who believes Emma's gift was neither supernatural nor coincidence, but an extreme form of pattern recognition. a brain wired to process data beyond human norms. Emma didn't predict the future. Moritz argues. She read the present so perfectly she could see what must happen next. Yet even Moritz admits the scope of Emma's calculations defies logic. No child should have tracked thousands of variables simultaneously. Heartbeat rhythms, footsteps, weather patterns, emotional micro-expressions. And none should have done so with such chilling accuracy. As August nears, strange occurrences intensify. Unmarked triangles appearing in chalk on city sidewalks, bells ringing at odd hours, unexplained fires in abandoned buildings. Social media erupts with speculation, fueling modern hysteria eerily reminiscent of 1873. Locals brace for disaster. City officials dismiss the rumors but quietly prepare emergency plans. And in the quiet hours before dawn, some claim to hear faint counting. Soft, deliberate, always in threes, echoing along the old cobblestone alleys. If Emma's pattern is real, it is about to repeat. And this time, the whole world is watching. Midnight, August 4th, 2025. Milwaukee's old brewery district lies silent under a waning moon. Crowds gather uneasily at river's edge. Journalists, believers, thrill-seekers, all waiting to see if prophecy will unfold. At 3:14 a.m., church bells ring unexpectedly. 3 times. Witnesses later swear they saw her then. A barefoot girl standing at the riverbank, hair pale as frost, eyes gray and unblinking. She faced east, toward the lake, clutching a small leather book. Some say she whispered numbers. Others insist she smiled. Then, as the final bell echoed, she stepped into the water and vanished. Moments later, the ground trembled. A warehouse collapsed. Sirens wailed. By dawn, headlines blared of disaster. 18 dead, 72 injured. Numbers that matched Emma's earliest patterns exactly. In the aftermath, the journal disappeared once more. Investigators found only 3 triangles etched into stone where Emma stood. Was it coincidence? Hoax? Or proof that some patterns, once begun, can never be broken? Today, the legend of Emma Richter endures. Historians debate her existence. Cryptographers search for meaning in her numbers. And locals still cross themselves when they hear church bells toll thrice at night. Because if the pattern truly repeats, then someday, somewhere, a gray-eyed child will appear again, counting steps, watching silently, writing numbers that foretell the end. And when she does, the cycle will begin anew.